The stars belonged to the old ones, and they made sure everyone knew it. For 3,000 years, the Concordat ruled the galaxy with an iron fist wrapped in silk promises. 12 species, ancient and powerful, sat in their grand towers on the capital world of Axis Prime and decided the fate of every younger race that reached for the stars. They called it protection. They called it guidance. They called it the natural order of civilized space. Everyone else called it a cage. The Concordat's laws were simple and absolute. No developing species could build weapons above Class 3 level. That meant no planet crackers, no stellar manipulators, and certainly no fleet killers. Faster-than-light travel was regulated like a precious drug. Want to jump to another star system? Fill out forms. Wait for approval. Pay the fees. And never, ever go where you weren't permitted. The enforcement arm of the Concordat was the Vasktar Imperium. They were reptilian, 7 feet tall with scales like burnished copper and eyes that saw in spectrums humans couldn't imagine. They had been spacefaring for 5,000 years when Earth's ancestors were still learning to make fire. They never let anyone forget it. Their ships prowled the trade lanes, massive and bristling with weapons. They stopped ships at random, demanded inspections, and levied fines for violations both real and imagined. Young species learned quickly to bow their heads and pay. The alternative was deletion. Earth had joined this cosmic order 53 years ago, when Dr. Sarah Chen completed the first human FTL drive in a cramped laboratory beneath Geneva. Humanity had thrown a party that lasted a month. They had dreamed of meeting alien friends, of trading stories and culture, of taking their place among the stars as equals. Reality had crashed down hard. The first Concordat ship appeared in orbit 3 weeks after humanity's first FTL test. It was a diplomatic vessel, they said. They came in peace, they said. The truth became clear in the first meeting. Ambassador Thexeran of the Vasktar Imperium stood before the United Earth Council and delivered their judgment. Humanity was classified as Level 2 developmental. They would be permitted to maintain their FTL technology under strict supervision. They would be confined to their home system. Mars could be colonized, but nothing beyond. Earth would pay an annual tribute of rare Earth metals and biological samples. When the Earth ambassador protested, Thexeran had laughed. It was a cold sound like rocks grinding together. "You wage war on yourselves," he said, his forked tongue tasting the air. "Your history is soaked in blood. You created weapons to exterminate your own kind. We have studied you for 60 of your years, watching your radio signals leak into space. You are violent, unstable, and dangerous. You should be grateful we permit you to exist at all." The council chamber had fallen silent. What could they say? He was right about their history. 2 world wars, nuclear weapons, genocides. Humans had been very good at killing each other, but that was before. Things were different now, weren't they? The Concordat didn't care. To them, humans were children playing with matches. Dangerous children who needed to be controlled. The years that followed were bitter. Human ships could travel to Mars and back. That was all. The asteroid belt was declared regulated space. Divided up among Concordat member species for mining, humans could purchase refined materials at inflated prices, but couldn't harvest the asteroids themselves. Earth's economy struggled under the tribute payments. Scientists who had dreamed of exploring distant worlds found themselves filing paperwork to travel to their own moon. The Vasktar patrol ships became a constant presence in Earth's sky, a reminder of who really controlled Sol's system. Every year, human ambassadors petitioned the Grand Assembly on Axis Prime for colonial rights. Every year they were denied. The gallery of alien dignitaries would laugh at them. Some species themselves barely permitted a handful of colonies would jeer. Humans were the joke of the Concordat, the violent apes who thought they deserved respect. But humans have a quality that older species had forgotten. When pushed down, they don't stay down. They adapt, they plan, they scheme. And most importantly, they remember every insult, every slight, every injustice. 10 years after first contact, the United Earth Council held a secret meeting. Only 12 people knew about it. They discussed a project that would take decades and cost more than the entire global defense budget. It would require humanity's best minds working in absolute secrecy. It would push the boundaries of physics, engineering, and human endurance. Admiral Chen Akira, daughter of the woman who invented FTL travel, presented the proposal. She was 40 years old, brilliant, and filled with quiet rage at what had been done to her species. They think we're children, she said, her voice steady. They think our violence makes us weak. They don't understand that our history of war has taught us something they forgot long ago. We know how to build weapons. We know how to kill. And we're very, very good at it. The vote was unanimous. Construction began in the shadow of Jupiter, hidden behind the gas giant's massive radiation belts that scrambled sensors. Automated factories were built first, churning out materials that didn't officially exist. Scientists worked in shifts, never seeing Earth, communicating through quantum-encrypted channels. The project had no name at first. Later, someone suggested Ragnarok. The name stuck. Publicly, Earth seemed to accept its place. Ambassadors continued their petitions, always polite, always respectful. Trade continued. Tribute was paid on time. The Vascatar patrols grew complacent. Why wouldn't they? Humans had no weapons that could threaten them. Human ships were barely capable of defending themselves against pirates. The Concordat had made a critical error. They had studied human history and saw only the violence. They saw the wars, the weapons, the destruction, but they didn't understand what that history meant. Humans didn't fight wars because they loved violence. They fought because they refused to be enslaved. Every tyrant who tried to conquer humanity learned the same lesson, usually too late. Push humans far enough, and they'll burn down everything, including themselves, rather than submit. The Concordat was about to learn that lesson too. 43 years after construction began, Admiral Chen stood in the command center of the Jupiter station and looked at the sensor displays. In the massive construction bay held in place by gravitational clamps, the Ragnarok waited. 15 kilometers of compressed neutronium armor, weapons that bent the laws of physics, power cores that ran on controlled stellar collapse. It was ready, and not a moment too soon. The Vascatar patrol captain Sreth had just made a fatal mistake in the asteroid belt. A mistake that would ignite a fire that would burn across the galaxy. The old order was about to end. The Concordat just didn't know it yet. The mining convoy consisted of 5 ships, old and battered, held together by human stubbornness and recycled parts. They worked the edges of the asteroid belt, the zones the Concordat hadn't bothered to claim. Slim pickings but honest work. Captain Maria Santos commanded the lead ship, the Pequod. She was 56, had been flying since she was 20, and knew every rock in the belt by heart. Her crew was good people, families. Her own daughter worked engineering on the Essex, the ship flying 300 kilometers off their port side. The navigation error was minor. A decimal point in the wrong place. Instead of coordinates that would take them along the human-approved route, their jump brought them out in Sector 419 Delta. Regulated space. Vascatar mining claim. Maria realized the mistake within seconds of dropping out of FTL. Her blood went cold when she saw the Vascatar cruiser on her sensors. All ships. Emergency turn. Get us back into approved space now, she barked into the comms, but it was too late. The cruiser, the Talon of Dominion, was already moving to intercept, its weapons powered up, targeting systems locking onto all 5 human ships. Captain Sreth sat in his command throne, tail coiled beneath him, and watched the pathetic human vessels scrambling away. Insects, that's all they were. Insects that needed to be reminded of their place. He could have hailed them, could have issued a warning, could have escorted them back to approved space with nothing more than a fine. That was the protocol for minor incursions. But Sreth was not interested in protocol. He was the nephew of Admiral Kessereth, High Commander of the Vascatar Imperium's 3rd Fleet. He had connections, ambition, and a deep contempt for the human species. They disgusted him with their soft skin and their emotional displays. They were barely civilized. "Weapons officer," he said, his voice a lazy hiss. "Destroy the trailing 2 ships." The weapons officer hesitated. "Captain, they're fleeing." "Regulations state..." Sreth's head snapped toward him. "Did I ask for regulations?" "Fire." 2 lances of superheated plasma leaped from the cruiser's main batteries. The Magellan and the Discovery didn't have time to scream. They simply ceased to exist, vaporized in an instant. 642 degrees Fahrenheit turns metal into vapor. The Vascatar plasma cannons ran at temperatures that would make stars jealous. 300 souls. Gone. Like they had never existed. Maria Santos watched it happen on her display. Her daughter was on the Essex, safe, but she knew people on those ships. Good people. Carlos, who made everyone laugh during the long hauls. Jennifer, who was saving up to bring her parents off Earth. All of them. Gone. Her hand shook on the controls. The talon of Dominion positioned itself between the remaining 3 ships and the border of approved space. Hesreth's face appeared on their view screens, scaled and terrible. "Humans," he said, tongue tasting the air. "You have violated concordate space. Your species must learn its place in the order of things. Consider this education. You may leave now. Tell your superiors what happens when you stray where you don't belong." Maria wanted to scream, wanted to rage, wanted to make him pay, but she had 3 ships left. 3 crews. Her daughter. "Understood," she forced out. "We're leaving. Remember this day, human. Remember what you are. Pray." The 3 ships limped back to human space. The entire journey, no one spoke. They transmitted the details ahead. By the time they docked at Ceres Station, the footage had already reached Earth. Earth exploded. The video played on every screen, every feed, every channel. Humans watched 2 of their ships, filled with their people, erased without warning. They heard Sreth's words. Education, pray. Protests erupted in every major city. People poured into the streets demanding action. The Earth Council chambers were stormed by crowds chanting for justice. For the first time since the formation of the United Earth Government, the system teetered on the edge of chaos. The Concordate's response came within hours. An official statement from Thexeron himself, broadcast from Axis Prime. The loss of life is regrettable, but the humans violated clearly marked territorial boundaries. Captain Sreth acted within his authority to enforce Concordate regulations. The humans are responsible for this tragedy. Perhaps now they will learn to follow the rules that keep them safe. That statement was a mistake, a catastrophic one. Humans could accept being pushed around. They could accept unfair laws, economic exploitation, even humiliation. They had endured all of that for decades. But being told that their murdered people deserved it, that their deaths were their own fault, that they should be grateful for the lesson, something snapped in the human psyche that day. A line was crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. The United Earth Council held an emergency session. Every delegate was present. Every screen showed the same footage played on repeat. 2 ships dying. Sreth's sneer. Thexeron's dismissal. The chamber was dead silent until Admiral Chen Akira entered. She walked to the center of the floor, placed a data chip on the podium, and looked at each delegate in turn. 43 years, she said. That's how long we've been working. You all authorized it. Some of you forgot about it. Some of you hoped we'd never need it. But we kept working. We kept building. And as of 16 hours ago, final trials were completed. Project Ragnarok is operational. A holo display sprang to life above the podium. Even people who knew about the project gasped. The sheer scale of what they'd built was impossible to comprehend until you saw it. The question before this council, Admiral Chen continued, is simple. Do we continue to bow? Do we accept that our people can be murdered without consequence? Or do we show the Concordate what humans are really capable of? Delegate Okonkwo from the African Union spoke first. If we do this, it's war. They have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. We have one weapon. One weapon is all we need, Admiral Chen replied. The Concordate rules through fear. They've never faced a species willing to risk everything. They've never faced us. Delegate Zhang from the Asian Federation stood. And after, if we win, do we become the new tyrants? That's up to us, Admiral Chen said. But I'd rather face that question as free people than die on our knees. The vote took 4 hours. Arguments raged. Some called for restraint, for diplomacy, for giving the Concordate one more chance. Others demanded immediate action. In the end, it wasn't even close. The resolution passed with 87%. Approval. Earth would show the Concordate what happened when you pushed humans too. Forward Admiral Chen returned to Jupiter Station and walked through the massive construction bay. The Ragnarok hung in space before her, held by magnetic clamps, 15 kilometers of death and defiance. Engineers were running final checks. Weapon systems were coming online. The crew, trained in secret for years, was boarding. She placed her hand on the airlock. The metal was cold against her palm. They think they educated us, she whispered. Time to teach them something. Never threaten humanity's children. She boarded the ship. Command crew snapped to attention. She walked to the captain's chair and sat down. Around her, stations lit up. The bridge hummed with barely contained power. All stations report, she commanded. One by one, they answered. Weapons hot. Engines ready. shields at maximum. The Ragnarok was awake. Helm, plot a course for Earth, maximum speed. It's time the Concordat met humanity's answer. The clamps released. The greatest warship ever built by human hands slid free of its berth and accelerated toward Earth. Behind it, in secret bays scattered throughout the outer system, 3 more planet killers began their own power-up sequences. The Concordat had declared that humans needed education. They were about to receive a lesson they would never forget. Class was in session. They came like they owned the galaxy, because they did. 50 Concordat warships dropped out of FTL at the edge of Earth's solar system in a perfectly coordinated formation. Fasktar dreadnoughts formed the core, each one 3 kilometers of weapons and armor. Surrounding them were cruisers from the Zethran Collective, frigates from the Molthar Confederacy, and support ships from 8 other member species. At the center of the formation, aboard the flagship Dominion's Pride, stood Thexaran himself. He had come personally to deliver Earth's final warning. The humans had been making noise, issuing threats, behaving like emotional children having a tantrum. It was time to remind them of reality. Establish orbit over their capital, he commanded. I want every human to look up and see what real power looks like. The fleet moved inward, passing Mars without incident. Earth's defense satellites and orbital stations watched helplessly. A few elderly destroyers, human-made and pathetically armed, scattered before the Concordat advance. Smart. At least the humans had some survival instinct. The fleet took up position in high orbit over Earth. 50 ships, blocking out stars, casting shadows over entire continents. Weapons charged, a show of force. The Concordat's favorite diplomatic tool. Thexaran opened a channel to every communication device on Earth. Every screen, every radio, every phone. He wanted everyone to hear this. Humans, his voice boomed across the planet. Your recent behavior is unacceptable. You issue threats. You speak of consequences. You forget your place. I am here to remind you. You will accept additional sanctions. You will surrender your remaining FTL-capable vessels for inspection. You will double your tribute payments. And you will— The sun dimmed, not metaphorically, not in some poetic sense. The actual sunlight striking Earth decreased by 3%. Shadows deepened. The temperature dropped half a degree. On Earth's surface, millions of people looked up in confusion. Thexaran stopped mid-sentence. What is that? His sensor officer was staring at his display, scales pale. Sir, something is emerging from behind Jupiter. It's massive. It's by the ancients. On Earth, Maria Santos stood in her apartment in New Tokyo, watching the sky, her daughter beside her. They had been listening to Thexaran's speech with clenched fists and grinding teeth. Now they watched something impossible happen. Something was eclipsing the sun, something moving between Earth and the star, something so huge that it blocked measurable amounts of light. The Ragnarok emerged from Jupiter's shadow, like a mountain falling upward into space, 15 kilometers long, 3 kilometers at its widest point. Its hull was the color of neutron stars, a deep black blue that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The armor plating was compressed neutronium, material that shouldn't exist outside the most extreme environments in the universe. Human scientists had spent a decade learning how to create it, stabilize it, and shape it. The ship's spine was a single massive barrel, a weapon running the entire length of the vessel. Around it, thousands of point defense turrets tracked in every direction. Missile pods covered the hull like scales on a dragon, and surrounding everything was a shimmer in space itself, a gravitic shear field that bent reality. The bridge of the Dominion's Pride erupted in chaos. Alarm screamed. Sensors overloaded trying to process what they were seeing. The energy readings didn't make sense. A single ship putting out more power than their entire fleet combined. Impossible. Thexaran's jaw hung open. In 300 years of life, across 100 campaigns, he had never seen anything like it. Admiral Chenakira sat in the command chair of the Ragnarok, watching Earth grow larger on her view screen. Around her, the bridge crew worked with calm efficiency. They had trained for this moment for years. Open a channel, she said quietly. All frequencies. I want everyone to hear this. Her face appeared on every screen in the solar system, human and alien alike. On Earth, billions watched. Aboard the Concordat ships, crews froze. I am Admiral Chenakira of the United Earth naval ship Ragnarok. High Chancellor Thexaran, you came to deliver warnings. How interesting. I have a message for you as well. She gestured, and the Ragnarok rotated slightly. The main cannon? The weapon that formed its spine aimed directly at the Concordat flagship. This is humanity's peace offering. Leave our system. Leave our space. Never return. Or learn why humans spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. We got very, very good at it. On the Dominion's pride, Thexeran's shock turned to rage. How dare they? How dare these primitives threaten him? Threaten the Concordat? He had 50 ships. They had one. Humans were insane. All ships, he snarled. Target that vessel. Destroy it. His weapons officer hesitated. Sir, the energy readings, I don't care about your readings. Fire. The Concordat fleet opened fire as one. It was the kind of barrage that could crack a planet's crust. Hundreds of plasma lances, brilliant and deadly. Missile swarms, thousands strong. Particle beams that could cut through anything. All of it converged on the Ragnarok. On Earth, people screamed. Their one hope, their magnificent ship, was about to die. The weapons hit the gravitic shear field and disappeared, not deflected, not absorbed, erased. The field collapsed matter and energy into quantum foam, breaking them down to their fundamental components before they could reach the hull. The plasma lances simply ceased to exist. The missiles touched the field and became clouds of atoms. The particle beams scattered into random radiation. The Ragnarok sailed through the barrage without a scratch. It didn't even slow down, is that all? Admiral Chen asked, her voice calm. Our turn. The point defense systems activated for a microsecond. A fraction of a second. 0.1% of the Ragnarok's actual firepower. The Vasktar dreadnought Blood of Conquest took the hit. It was 3 kilometers of pride, technology, and history. The flagship of the Vasktar's 7th Fleet. It had conquered 18 systems. It had broken the backs of a dozen rebellions. It atomized, completely, instantly. The energy strike was so concentrated, so precise, that every molecule of the ship broke apart simultaneously. Sensors couldn't even register it as an explosion. One moment the ship existed. The next moment there was a dispersing cloud of atoms and a fading heat signature. 4,000 Vasktar warriors gone like they had never been. The Concordat fleet froze. 50 ships and none of them moved. Crews stared at empty space where one of their mightiest vessels had been. Admiral Chen's voice filled the silence. That was our point defense system. A tiny fraction of our capabilities. Would you like to see the main weapon? I can demonstrate it on one of your homeworlds if you prefer. Choose. Thexeran couldn't speak. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. In 3 centuries, he had never felt fear. Not real fear. Now it wrapped around his heart like ice. I didn't think so, Admiral Chen continued. You have 10 minutes to leave our system. After that, we start reducing your fleet to atoms. Starting with your flagship, Thexeran. I want you to live. I want you to go back to Axis Prime and tell them what you saw here. Tell them what happens when you push humans too far. The Concordat ship scattered. It wasn't a retreat. It wasn't even a rout. It was pure panic. Ships fled in every direction, jumping to FTL the moment they were clear. The mighty fleet that had arrived with such arrogance dissolved in minutes. Thexeran's ship was the last to leave. He stood on the bridge staring at the Ragnarok on his view screen. This couldn't be happening. Humans were primitives. They were children. They were supposed to bow. Jump now. His pilot screamed. The Dominion's pride leaped to FTL, racing away from Sol system like prey fleeing a predator. On Earth, silence reigned for 3 heartbeats. Then every city, every town, every settlement erupted in celebration. People poured into the streets, crying, laughing, screaming in joy. They had been stepped on for decades. They had been treated like animals. And now, finally, someone had shown the Concordat what humanity really was. Maria Santos hugged her daughter tight, tears streaming down her face. We're free, she whispered. Oh God, we're free. But aboard the Ragnarok, Admiral Chen didn't celebrate. She knew what was coming. The Concordat wouldn't accept this. They couldn't. Their entire power structure was built on fear and overwhelming force. If one species could defy them, others would follow. War was coming, real war. The kind the galaxy hadn't seen in thousands of years. Communications, open channels to all Concordat space, she ordered. Her image broadcast across hundreds of worlds. Billions of beings watched. Some were Concordat members, shocked and terrified. Others were subject species, oppressed and controlled. They watched with something else. Hope. My name is Admiral Chen Akira. Today humanity showed you our ship. Tomorrow the galaxy changes. To every species crushed under Concordat rule, we say this: you don't have to kneel anymore. To the Concordat, we say this: your reign is over. Not because we'll destroy you, but because we're offering a choice. Join us in a real federation of equals or leave. But if you ever try to enslave others again, you'll answer to us. She closed the channel and looked at her crew. Young faces. Determined faces. Human faces. Helm, take us to the asteroid belt. We have people there who need to know they're safe now. The Ragnarok turned and accelerated away from Earth, leaving the celebrating planet behind. As it moved, 3 more shapes detached from hiding places throughout the outer system. 3 more planet killers, slightly smaller but just as deadly. Humanity had built backups, just in case the old order was broken. What came next would depend on choices made in the days ahead. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The galaxy had not slept. Across hundreds of worlds, billions of beings watched the same footage over and over. The Ragnarok emerging from Jupiter's shadow, the Concordat fleet's barrage disappearing into nothing, the dreadnought atomizing, Admiral Chen's ultimatum. On Axis Prime, the Grand Assembly met in emergency session. 12 species had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia. Now they sat in their towers and realized that their power rested on a foundation that had just cracked. Thexarin stood before them, scales dull with shame. He had fled. He who had conquered systems had run from humans like a prey animal. The assembly chamber was silent as he delivered his report. "The ship is beyond our current capabilities," he said, voice hollow. "Our combined firepower had no effect. The energy readings suggest they've learned to weaponize stellar collapse, contain gravitational distortions, and manipulate space-time itself. One ship destroyed our finest dreadnought in microseconds." Chancellor Tivren of the Molthar spoke, her forearms gesturing in distress. "One ship. They showed us one ship. How many more do they have?" "Unknown, but intercepted transmissions suggest at least 4. The chamber erupted. Panic, anger, disbelief. The Concordat had maintained order through overwhelming force. What happened when someone had more force than them? Admiral Kessereth, uncle of the disgraced Esreth, slammed his tail on the floor for silence. He was old, scarred, and had commanded fleets for 2 centuries. "We cannot allow this challenge to stand. If the humans defy us, others will follow. The order will collapse. We must respond with total force. Gather every warship. We crush Earth and make an example that will echo for 10,000 years." Some agreed. Some argued for negotiation. The debate raged for hours. Meanwhile, across Concordat space, something unexpected happened. The subject species, the ones kept in chains for generations, began to act. On the industrial world of Praxa 7th, the native Praxians had been forced to work Vasktar mines for 300 years. They watched Admiral Chen's broadcast in secret gatherings. When Concordat overseers arrived the next morning, the mines were empty. The Praxians had sealed themselves in the deepest tunnels, and the message they transmitted was simple: "We will not work until we are free." On Thelm, a Zethran colony world, the local population simply stopped acknowledging Concordat authority. They didn't fight. They didn't riot. They just stopped obeying. Ships arrived demanding tribute, and no one loaded the cargo. Officials gave orders, and no one followed them. The Kethran cluster, 6 systems that had been conquered 2,000 years ago, declared independence. Their petition was broadcast across all channels. If humanity can stand, so can we. The cracks were spreading. Fast. Earth received over 10,000 transmissions in the first day. Some were threats from Concordat members. Some were pleas for help from oppressed species. Some were offers of alliance. Some were simply messages of thanks from beings who had never dared to hope before. Admiral Chen read them all in her ready room aboard the Ragnarok. Each one weighed on her. These people were looking to humanity for salvation, but Earth had 4 ships. The Concordat had thousands. Commander Parks, her second officer, entered. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission. It's from the Zethran Collective. They want to talk." The Zethran were one of the 12 founding species. Insectoid, brilliant, and pragmatic. If they were reaching out, it meant something had shifted. The transmission showed Hive Mother Zeskra, her compound eyes reflecting rainbow patterns. "Admiral Chen, the Collective has analyzed your ship's capabilities. We also analyzed the political situation. The Concordat is fracturing. This was inevitable. You simply accelerated it. And you want Chen asked. Survival. The Vasktar will push for war. They cannot accept loss of face. But war with you would be extinction for all of us. The Zethran Collective formally withdraws from the Concordat effective immediately. We propose an alternative alliance, one without tribute, without oppression, true partnership. It was the first domino. Over the next week, 2 more founding species withdrew. The progenitors, ancient and mysterious, transmitted a simple message. We approve of the humans' actions. The Concordat has grown corrupt. We will not support war against Earth. The Molthar Confederacy, always the most moderate of the Concordat members, also withdrew. We regret the path that led to this crisis, but we will not participate in a war of extinction against a species that only defended itself. The Concordat was collapsing from within, but the Vasktar Imperium refused to accept it. Admiral Kesrith gathered what remained loyal. 7 species, 3,000 warships. It was the largest military force assembled in 1,000 years. They called it the Punishment Fleet. Humans intercepted their communications. They were coming to Earth. They would glass the planet, destroy the Ragnarok and the other human ships, and make an example so terrible that no species would ever dare defy the old order again. The United Earth Council met once more. Admiral Chen attended via hologram, standing watch in Sol system with the Ragnarok. They're coming, she said simply. 3,000 ships. Our simulations suggest the Ragnarok and her sister ships can destroy perhaps 1,000 before they overwhelm us. Earth will die. Silence filled the chamber. Then Delegate Okonkwo stood. Can we evacuate? Some, not enough. Maybe 10 million people. There are 8 billion on Earth. Then we fight, Okonkwo said. We don't run. We've never run. Let them come. Let them see what it costs to kill humanity. The vote was unanimous. Earth would stand. But Chen had a different plan. I'm not asking permission. I'm informing you. I'm taking the Ragnarok to them. We'll meet the fleet at Threshold Station, the old Concordat waypoint. Maybe we can draw them away from Earth. Maybe we can hurt them badly enough that they reconsider. That's suicide, Delegate Zhang said. Probably, but I didn't build this ship to hide behind. I built it to protect Earth. Let me do that. The 4 planet killers left Sol system together, jumping toward Threshold Station. Behind them, Earth's remaining defense fleet prepared for the worst. Weapons were distributed to civilians. Bunkers were opened. If the Vaskatar came, they would face a people who had decided that death was preferable to chains. The 2 fleets met at Threshold Station, a massive structure that had served as a jump point for Concordat ships for 2 millennia. The Vasktar Punishment Fleet emerged from FTL in perfect formation. 3,000 ships bristling with weapons ready to end humanity's defiance. Admiral Kesrith sat aboard his flagship, the massive dreadnought Emperor's Vengeance. He looked at his tactical display and saw 4 human ships waiting. 4 against 3,000. The arrogance was insulting. Do they think so little of us? He hissed. Or are they simply insane? Chen broadcast to the entire fleet. Admiral Kesrith. Turn around. You don't want to do this. Every ship you lose is a being that didn't need to die. We don't want to kill you, but we will if you force us. Kesrith laughed. It was a sound like rocks in a grinder. You think 4 ships can stand against the might of the Imperium? You are children playing with weapons you don't understand. We will sweep you aside and then we will burn your world until... He never finished. The 4 human ships fired simultaneously. The main cannons, the weapons that ran the length of each vessel, unleashed directed stellar collapse beams. They were super weapons, devices that created and controlled miniature collapsing stars and directed their energy into focused streams. 4 beams. Each one hit a different section of the Vasktar formation. 200 ships ceased to exist instantly, not destroyed, not even vaporized, converted into energy and scattered quantum particles. The beams carved through the fleet like scythes through wheat. The Ragnarok's bridge rocked from the recoil. Warning lights flashed. The weapons had just expended enough energy to power Earth for a year. Main cannons offline for recharge, her weapons officer reported. 47 minutes to ready. Switch to secondary systems, Chen ordered. The point defense networks and missile pods opened up. Thousands of warheads, each one capable of cracking a ship in half, streaked toward the Vasktar fleet. The gravitic shear fields expanded, creating zones where physics broke down and anything entering simply came apart. The punishment fleet returned fire, plasma missiles, kinetic rounds. Everything they had. The 4 human ships took hits. The Ragnarok shuddered as a plasma lance penetrated the outer shielding and melted a section of armor. Alarms screamed. The sister ship Armageddon lost its port missile pod to a direct hit. Casualties, damage control reported. Engineering Deck 3. 14 dead. Chen's jaw tightened. Her people, dying for a war they never wanted. Focus fire on their command ships. Make every death count. The battle raged for 3 hours. Space became a storm of energy and death. The human ships moved in coordinated patterns, their AI systems processing millions of calculations per second, finding optimal firing solutions, predicting enemy movements. They were outnumbered 700 to 1, but they had been built by a species that spent its entire history learning how to fight against bad odds. When the main cannons recharged, they fired again. 3 more swaths of the Vascatar fleet disappeared. The sister ships Apocalypse and Cataclysm added their fire. Admiral Kesrith watched his fleet die. 1,000 ships gone, then 1,500. His tactics meant nothing against these monsters. His numerical advantage was evaporating. All ships, full retreat, he screamed. But the human ships pressed forward. Chen's voice was cold. You came to burn our world. To murder billions, no, you don't get to run. The Ragnarok's weapons fired again. The Vascatar fleet broke. Not in an organized retreat, but in complete rout. Ships scattered in every direction, jumping to FTL without coordination, without orders. They simply fled. The proud punishment fleet, assembled to destroy humanity, reduced to terrified survivors running for their lives. The 4 human ships held position at Threshold Station. Around them floated debris fields that had once been 2,000 warships. The Ragnarok's hull was scarred and burned. The Armageddon was venting atmosphere from 3 decks. The Apocalypse had lost half her port weapons. The Cataclysm was barely mobile, her engines damaged, but they had won. 4 ships against 3,000. The mathematics shouldn't have worked. But humans had never been good at accepting what the math said should happen. Admiral Chen sat in her command chair, exhausted. Around her, the bridge crew worked in stunned silence. They had survived. Somehow they had survived. Casualty report, she said quietly. Commander Parks consulted his datapad, his face grim. 417 dead across all 4 ships. Another 600 wounded. The Cataclysm needs immediate repairs. She won't make it back to Sol without help. 400 dead. Chen closed her eyes. 400 people who would never see Earth again. People who had families, dreams, futures. All gone because the Vascatar couldn't accept that humans deserved freedom. Ma'am, Communications Officer Lee spoke up. We're receiving transmissions. Thousands of them. From all over the galaxy. Put them through. Main view screen. The screen flickered to life, showing hundreds of faces. Different species, different worlds. Some were crying. Some were cheering. Some simply stared in disbelief. A Praxian miner, his blue skin marked with old scars. Thank you. Thank you for showing us that tyrants can bleed. A Kethran diplomat, her tentacles trembling. Our cluster stands with humanity. We declare the Concordat dead. An elderly Molthar weeping openly. My granddaughter died in Concordat mines. She never saw freedom, but now others will. Thank you. The messages kept coming. Species that had been crushed for generations, seeing hope for the first time in their lives. The Concordat hadn't just controlled them through weapons. It had controlled them through the belief that resistance was futile. That power was permanent. Humanity had shattered that belief. Admiral Kesareth's flagship, the Emperor's Vengeance, had survived the battle. It limped into Vascatar space 3 days later, carrying the broken remnants of the proud Imperium's fleet. Of 3,000 ships, fewer than 800 returned. Kesreth stood before the High Council of the Vascatar Imperium, scales dull, tail dragging on the floor. These were the leaders of his people, the ones who had commanded the galaxy for millennia. Now they looked at him with hollow eyes. How? First Counselor Thexvek asked. How did we lose? They are not what we thought, Kesareth said, his voice dead. We believed them primitive. We saw their violence and mistook it for weakness. We didn't understand that their entire history prepared them for this. Every war they fought against themselves taught them lessons. Every weapon they created, every tactic they developed, every sacrifice they made, it was all training. Training for the day someone pushed them too far. What do we do now? Kesareth was silent for a long moment. Then, we surrender, unconditionally. before they decide to finish what we started. The council chamber erupted in protest. Surrender? The Vascatar Imperium had never surrendered. They were conquerors, not prey. But Kessereth silenced them with a look. I watched 2,000 ships die. I watched weapons that bend reality itself. The humans have 3 more planet killers under construction, according to our intelligence. By next year, they'll have 10. In 5 years, 100. They will not stop building until they feel safe, and we just proved to them that they will never be safe as long as we exist. So we have a choice. We surrender now, or they erase us from the galaxy. The debate raged for hours, but in the end, survival instinct won. The Vascatar Imperium formally requested terms of surrender from Earth. The transmission reached Admiral Chen as she supervised repairs to the Cataclysm. She read it twice, not quite believing it. They're surrendering, she said to Commander Parks, just like that. The Vascatar Imperium, 5,000 years old, is surrendering to us. What do we tell them? Chen thought about Captain Sareth, the one who had started all of this by murdering civilians in the asteroid belt. She thought about Thexaran sneering at humanity. She thought about the 400 people who had died at Threshold Station. Tell them we accept. But there are conditions. The conditions were harsh but not vindictive. The Vascatar would disarm to defensive forces only. They would pay reparations to every species they had oppressed. They would open their borders and allow free immigration. And most importantly, they would stand trial. Every officer involved in atrocities, including Sreth, would face justice. The Imperium accepted. They had no choice. 3 months later, Admiral Chen stood on Earth, in the newly built Federation Hall. It was a massive structure, built with help from the Zethran, Molthar, and dozens of other species. The hall could hold representatives from 200 worlds. Today it held representatives from 47. More were coming. The old Concordat had collapsed completely. Some species had fractured into civil wars, old grievances exploding after millennia of forced unity. Others thrived free for the first time, and many looked to Earth for guidance. Chen didn't want to give a speech. She was a soldier, not a politician, but she was also the woman who had faced down the Concordat fleet. People listened when she talked. She stood at the podium and looked out at the assembled beings. So many different forms of life, so many species that had suffered under tyranny. We didn't build the Ragnarok to conquer, she began. We built it because we were tired of kneeling. We built it because every human child deserves to reach for the stars without asking permission. We built it because our history taught us that freedom isn't free. Someone always has to pay the price. She paused, gathering her thoughts. The Concordat ended because it was built on a lie. The lie that power makes right. That the strong should rule the weak. That some species are better than others. We reject that lie. We believe every being has the right to live free. Every species has the right to determine its own future. But make no mistake, this new federation we're building isn't pacifist. We're not naive. We know evil exists in the galaxy. We know tyrants will rise. And when they do, we'll be ready, because humans learned something in our long, bloody history. Peace isn't the absence of the capacity for violence. It's the choice not to use it. But you have to have the capacity first. So this is our promise. To every species here, to every being watching across the galaxy, join us in building something better. A federation of equals. No tribute. No oppression. No forced laws. Just cooperation and mutual defense. But if you ever try to make slaves of others, if you ever think you can conquer and oppress because you're strong, you'll answer to humanity. And we are very, very good at breaking chains. The chamber erupted in applause. Not all of it was enthusiastic. Some species were worried about trading one overlord for another. Chen understood that. Trust would take time. After the ceremony, she found Thexaran waiting outside. The former High Chancellor of the Concordat looked old now. His scales faded, his posture bent. The Vascatar government had stripped him of rank and title. He was nobody now. I wanted to ask you something, he said. Why did you show mercy? You could have destroyed us. You could have done to us what we did to dozens of species. Why didn't you? Chen looked at him for a long moment. Because we're not you. We remember what it's like to be helpless. We remember what it's like to watch our people die and be unable to stop it. We don't want to become the monsters we fought against. But you're still building more ships. We see the construction. You'll have 50 planet killers within 10 years. Yes, Chen said simply. Because we learned another lesson too. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We want peace, Thexarin. We really do. But we'll never be helpless again. No one will ever again be able to do to humanity what you did. That's not a threat. It's a promise, Thexaron nodded slowly. Do you know what frightens me most about your species? What? You did all this in 50 years. 50 years from first contact to building weapons that eclipse anything we created in 5 millennia. Imagine what you'll create in 500 years. In 5,000. He looked at her with something like fear. The galaxy has no idea what's coming. Chen smiled, but there was no humor in it. Neither do we. But that's what being human means. We never stop pushing. Never stop building. Never stop reaching for something better. You tried to cage us, Thexarin. All you did was teach us to build bigger hammers to break the locks. She walked away, leaving the former chancellor standing alone. 1 year later, Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the mining ship New Discovery, named after one of the vessels Esreth had destroyed. Her daughter, Elena, served as her second officer. They were in the asteroid belt, the same belt where the nightmare had begun. But things were different now. Human ships moved freely through space. The asteroid belt was human territory, recognized by the new Federation. Mining convoys worked without fear. No Vascatar patrols threatened them. Mom, look at that, Elena said, pointing at the view screen. A Concordat memorial station hung in space nearby, built by the Federation. It listed the names of every being who had died under Concordat oppression, including the 300 souls from the Magellan and Discovery. Maria found Carlos's name, Jennifer's, so many others. We remember, she whispered. We always remember. Above Earth, the Ragnarok hung in orbit alongside her sister ships and the new vessels under construction. The shipyards never stopped working. Humanity was building a fleet, not to conquer, not to oppress, but to make sure that never again would they be helpless. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of Orbital Station 1, watching the construction. Someone approached from behind. She turned to see an elderly human, Ambassador Liu from the Earth Council. Some people are worried, he said. They say we're becoming the very thing we fought against. Building weapons of war. Intimidating other species, are we? Chen asked. I don't think so, not yet. But it's a thin line. It is, Chen agreed. That's why we have to be vigilant. Not just against external threats, but against ourselves. Power corrupts. We've seen it happen across the galaxy. It could happen to us too. So what do? Chen turned back to watch the ships under construction. We stay human. We remember where we came from. We remember the 300 who died in the asteroid belt. The 400 who died at Threshold Station. We remember what it felt like to be small and helpless, and we make sure that feeling drives us to protect others, not dominate them. And if we forget, then someone will have to stop us. Just like we stopped the Concordat, she smiled grimly. Maybe that's the real lesson. Power must always be checked, always be questioned, always be held accountable. The moment you think you're beyond that, you've already lost. Far across the galaxy, in systems humanity had never visited, species watched and planned. Some with hope, some with fear, some with ambition. The humans had changed everything. The old order was dead. The new one was still being born. No one knew what shape it would take. But everyone knew one thing. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. They had learned what happens when you push humans too far. When you threaten their children. When you try to make them kneel. Humans don't kneel. They build weapons that crack planets. They build ships that eclipse suns. They build a future where no one has to be afraid anymore. And if you stand in the way of that future, you learn the oldest human lesson of all. Never back a human into a corner. Because humans are very, very good at fighting their way out. The end